Chapter 244. After the spiritual energy in the array was sucked dry, a 3-meter-wide hole appeared before everyone's eyes. Immediately, 2 people dashed into the hole and observed it. Then, they nodded to everyone. The group of old fellows carefully went in, leaving the remaining people to guard the hole. Damn it! Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart. If they all went in, he could sneak in behind them to see what kind of place it was. Who knew that not long after, the sounds of fighting could be heard coming from inside. Then Dongfang Chang Ao shouted, "How dare you, evildoer!" The expressions of the people outside the hole changed. They nodded at each other and dashed in. The sounds of fighting became more intense. Even Yu Qianqiu, who was hiding in the mountain opposite, could feel the ground shaking. Evildoer. Yu Qianqiu mumbled to himself. He pulled down the black mask on his head, revealing only his eyes. Just as he was about to sneak in to watch the show, he was suddenly attracted by a place. From his point of view, the scene at the corner of the valley suddenly fluctuated, and another cave entrance suddenly appeared on the mountain wall. 2 old men in white scuttled out and looked around. Then, they nodded at the hole. Then, one of them dashed out and said something to the 2 old men before flying away. "It's really you." Yu Qianqiu sneered to himself. The person who flew away was none other than 100 Flowers Palace's Yan Juixing. He was also heading in the direction of the 100 Flowers Valley. After the hole that appeared suddenly returned to its original state, the 2 old men in white flashed to the hole that the people from supporting Immortals Island had entered. They stood guard in front of the hole and took out a shiny silver chain from their storage bags, holding it horizontally in their hands. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the 2 ends of the chain seemed to be tied with 2 sharp claws. Yu Qianqiu secretly pondered about their origins. Judging from their clothes and weapons, he had not seen or heard of them in the cultivation world. Listening to the sounds of fierce fighting in the cave and the occasional blood-curdling screams, he didn't know which side had won. However, the people in the cave were not to be trifled with. Otherwise, they would not have been able to fight against the 50 crossing calamity stage experts from the supporting Immortal Island for such a long time. The people from Fuxian Island probably weren't feeling any better. From Dongfang Chang Ao's angry roars, it was obvious that he was like a wounded lion. Yu Qianqiu shook his head inwardly. This Fuxian Island must have been too arrogant in the cultivation world. They dared to barge into other people's lair without any backup. They didn't even consider that those fellows who could annihilate on Kwangsung were not easy to deal with. They deserved to learn from their mistakes. The sounds of fighting became clearer and clearer as it approached the entrance of the cave. As soon as the elders of the supporting Immortal Island shot out, they were greeted by 2 sharp claws that swept across the sky. The silver dragon brandished its claws, the light and shadow were cold, stirring up the entire valley with echoes of "hua-hua." After a few violent sounds of metal clashing, the few people who were just about to rush out were forced back. It's over. Supporting Immortal Island had suffered a great loss this time. They closed the door to beat the dog and attacked from both sides. Yu Qianqiu clearly saw that the few people who had just shot out of the cave were already injured. Hi! A shout came from the cave, and suddenly, a dazzling golden light shot out from the cave entrance. Bang! With a loud sound, the cave entrance suddenly collapsed. Yu Qianqiu, who was hiding on the other side of the mountain, was speechless. Oh my! What is this? It actually caused half of the mountain to collapse. Immediately after, a golden light shot out from the collapsed area, causing the earth to collapse and rocks to fly. A figure dashed out from the collapsed area, and it was Dongfang Chang Ao. The 2 white-robed elders outside immediately pounced over, and the 2 silver dragon claws clawed out from the left and right. At this moment, Dongfang Chang Ao was not holding a sword in his hand, but a golden spear. With a shake of his hand, the golden spear's spearhead suddenly enlarged by 1,000 times. The spearhead was the size of half a door, and it swept towards the incoming chain claws with a dazzling golden light. Ding-dang! The 2 silver dragons were cut into pieces by the sharp golden light. High-grade offensive magic treasure. The 2 of them exclaimed at the same time. However, this was only the first spear, and Dongfang Chang, Ao's second spear swept over. Go! As one of them shouted, he quickly dodged. Without a weapon, how could he block the attack of a high-grade magic treasure with his bare hands? The other person's reaction seemed to be a little slower, and he was hit by the spear's golden light. Ah! Accompanied by a scream, the person was split into 2 and fell down. Dongfang Chang Ao brandished his spear like a god of death. He stood in the air and glanced at the hole he opened. As soon as more than 10 of his fellow sect members flew out, a silver chain claw flew out from the hole and grabbed towards the last person who flew out. Dongfang Chang Ao swung the golden spear in his hand, and blocked the flying claw for his fellow sect member. The chain claw wrapped around the spear's handle where the spear's head connected. He raised the spear, and the owner of the chain claw flew out from the hole together with the chain. Who? The golden light whistled and attacked. When that person saw the situation clearly, he was almost scared out of his wits. He immediately let go of the chain and wanted to escape, but he was still too late. The golden light flashed, and the broken chain claw sprinkled a rain of blood. Quickly return to the sect, you guys go first. I will cover you. Dongfang Chang Ao shouted with grief and indignation. Out of the 50 people that came out, only a dozen or so were left. How could he not feel sad? The remaining people from Fuxian Island did not say anything and immediately ran away. He was the only one left to guard the hole with his spear. Almost every spear attack did not miss, and he killed everyone that came out. The eyes of the white-robed elder who survived the spear turned red, but he did not dare to underestimate the sharpness of the high-grade magic treasure. Good treasure. Good treasure. Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up, and he stared at the golden spear in Dongfang Chang Ao's hand. The people under the hole seemed to know that it was too difficult to charge out, so no one came out. Dongfang Chang Ao was still guarding there. Yu Qianzhou secretly felt something was wrong, and he looked at the hole that Yan Zhuixing came out from. Sure enough, the hole was already wide open. Swoosh swoosh. Dozens of people in white flew out, and immediately surrounded Dongfang Chang Ao. The latter was shocked. He did not expect there to be a back door in this cave. He was not a rigid person, so he moved, and with a few spear attacks, he broke through the encirclement, and flew away quickly. A group of people chased after him. Seeing that Dongfang Chang Ao was flying in the direction of the 100 Flowers Valley, Yu Qianzhou thought that if he could escape to the 100 Flowers Valley, it would be a way to save his life. Yan Zhuixing always did things sneakily, and he reckoned that this group of people would not dare to break into the 100 Flowers Valley. Moreover, there was the Cultivation Alliance there. The valley immediately became empty. Yu Qianzhou looked at the open hole, and he wanted to run in to see, but he did not know if there was anyone inside. Then, he thought that those people would definitely come back, regardless of whether they could chase Dongfang Chang Ao or not. So, he gave up the idea of taking the risk. He thought to himself, supporting Xian Island has lost more than 30 tribulation stage elders this time, and I don't know what will happen next. I'd better continue to watch the show. I just need to help at the critical moment. Yu Qianzhou glanced at the corpses in the valley, and he suddenly froze on the spot. When he came to his senses, he rubbed his eyes, and hurriedly jumped to the place where the battle took place. He saw that the people in white killed by Dongfang Chang Ao were all gone, and there were animal corpses on the ground. To be exact, they should be the corpses of white foxes. This immediately made him think of something. Chapter 245. Little Snow's 4 treasures belonged to the Fox clan, and Yan Zhuisheng had auctioned them off. There had to be a connection between the two. Were the corpses of the Snow Fox clan in the extreme north? Yu Qianqiu thought about it again and again, but he still pulled Bai Suzhen out to verify it. Seeing the corpses of her clansmen on the ground, Bai Suzhen's face flashed a trace of desolation. Yu Qianqiu understood from her expression and didn't ask any more. He casually flicked out a dozen fireballs and instantly turned the corpses of the Fox clan into ashes. After Yu Qianqiu roughly explained what had happened, Bai Suzhen didn't say anything else and hurriedly entered the cave. Yu Qianqiu had no choice but to follow her in. After going deeper, he realized that this was a spirit stone mine that had been abandoned for many years. It was a pity that he didn't see a single living person. In a large mine, the corpses of the supporting Immortal Island and the Fox clan were all over the ground. Bai Suzhen looked around and actually found a dying Fox clan member. Seeing Bai Suzhen supporting the elder and using her demonic essence to save him, Yu Qianqiu sighed and said, "We can't stay here for long. Let's go back first." When the 3 of them reappeared, they were already in the earliest bamboo house of Utopia. This was their earliest residence, and there was also House Sanxi's tomb in the backyard. Therefore, this place had become one of the forbidden areas of Utopia. After helping her carry the Fox clan elder to a bamboo bed, Yu Qianqiu couldn't bear to see her anxious look. He took out a rainbow-colored rui pill and said, "Use this. I believe that as long as he's still breathing, he can be saved." Bai Suzhen was stunned. She knew how precious the rui pill was. After hesitating for a moment, she still took it and turned around to help the dying elder consume it. After doing what needed to be done, she could only leave it to fate. If even the rui pill that could bring the dead back to life couldn't save him, then there was nothing she could do. Seeing her staring at the old man on the bamboo bed in a daze, Yu Qianqiu walked to her side and comforted her. "Sister, don't worry. He'll be fine. Do you know him?" "He's my uncle." Bai Suzhen stuttered. Yu Qianqiu was completely speechless. Thus, the 2 of them didn't do anything and just quietly guarded the bamboo house. However, the effects of the rui pill, refined from the adumbra flower, were truly excellent. A demon that was on the verge of death slowly regained consciousness in less than a day. When he opened his eyes, he saw Bai Suzhen guarding the bedside with a concerned expression. He exclaimed in surprise, "Ling, aren't you dead?" Yu Qianqiu knew that Ling was Bai Suzhen's nickname in the past. "Uncle, it's me." Bai Suzhen smiled sweetly. "Where is this?" The man looked around. When he saw Bai Suzhen's attire, he exclaimed in surprise again, "Little Snow's 4 treasures. Why are they on you?" Bai Suzhen shook her head and didn't answer. Instead, she frowned and asked, "Uncle, why aren't you staying in the clan? Why did you come to the Huaxia Empire?" "It's all because your mother forced us to." The man laughed bitterly and touched the wound on his abdomen that was about to heal. He said blankly, "You saved me." "Not me, he saved you." Bai Suzhen pointed at Yu Qianqiu and said. The man sized up Yu Qianqiu and struggled to get up to thank him. Yu Qianqiu hurriedly pressed him down and said with a smile, "It's nothing. There's no need to be so polite. Just focus on recovering. He's your man." The man was puzzled. Bai Suzhen and Yu Qianqiu looked at each other. Bai Suzhen smiled non-committally, then frowned and said, "Uncle, you said my mother forced you. What's going on?" The man shook his head with a bitter smile and told them what had happened. It turned out that Bai Suzhen's mother, Shui Qingmei, had been forced to step down from the position of clan leader for the sake of her daughter. She had never been reconciled to it, and just 100 years ago, she, who had been accumulating power, had taken back the position of clan leader from the hands of a man. She had then gone on a killing spree within the clan, forcing the male clan leader who had ascended to the position from her hands to lead his people and flee. In the end, they fled to the Huaxia Empire. His name was Xue Qingkong. He was also one of the patriarch's subordinates. Naturally, he also fled to the Huaxia Empire. Yu Qianqiu looked at Bai Suzhen in shock after hearing about the female patriarch's ruthless methods. He thought to himself, your mother is not as gentle as you say. But thinking about it, a mother might show a positive side to her daughter, but how many daughters would say bad things about their mother? Senior, how did you get together with Yan Zhuixing of the 100 Flowers Palace? Why did he auction the 4 treasures? Yu Qianqiu asked. When we came, Yan Zhuixing wasn't even born yet. If there's one, it's with his father, Yan Bugui. Xue Qingkong smiled bitterly and began to tell them what happened after that. The male patriarch of the Fox tribe had originally brought 600 to 700 people with him to escape. But who knew that Bai Suzhen's mother was so cruel and merciless? She wanted to eliminate the root of the problem and sent people to chase after them. The number of people who had been running for their lives had decreased from 6 to 700 to 3 to 400. Only when they had escaped into the territory of another empire did the Fox clan, who had been chasing after them, receive an attack from the local cultivators, allowing the remaining people to survive. But they didn't dare to stay in that empire, so they secretly sneaked into the Huaxia Empire. After hiding in the Huaxia Empire, they wanted to go back and take revenge, but they weren't Xue Qingmei's match. They wanted to expand their forces there, but the human cultivators were very against the Yao race. If they weren't careful, they might bring disaster upon themselves. Just when everyone was feeling disheartened, Yan Bugui, who had married Bai Hua Fairy, appeared. It turned out that Yan Bugui had accidentally obtained a demon-revealing mirror made by a divine craftsman. When he met them, he found out that they were actually a group of fox demons. Unlike the others, Yan Bugui didn't reject the Yao race, he even befriended them and helped them as much as he could. When Yan Bugui found out about their origins, as well as that they knew the long-lost primordial spirit stripping technique, he immediately came up with a perfect revenge plan for them. That was to control the human cultivators and gather enough power to return to the extreme north for revenge. Hearing Xue Qingkong's explanation, Yu Qianqiu doubtfully asked, is Yan Bugui really that kind? That's right. Back then, we were blinded by our hatred. By the time we realized it, it was already too late, Xue Qingkong sighed. After realizing that he was using us, we immediately wanted to turn against him, but we didn't know that he had already poisoned us with the 10,000 demons bone-adhering poison. Once it was activated, we felt like we were better off dead than alive. From then on, we had to take the antidote once a month. If anyone dared to disobey his orders, the patriarch died from this poison. The scene of his death was too horrible to even look at. All his bones were melted away by the poison, leaving him lying on the ground like a pile of mud. We watched as he slowly died of exhaustion. The two of them looked at each other. They knew that the patriarch he was talking about was the male patriarch who had led them to this place. They didn't expect that he was already dead. Seeing that he still looked fearful, Bai Suzhen frowned and said, "Uncle, you don't have to worry. I gave you the Rui pill refined from the Adumbra flower to heal your wounds. The poison in your body should be neutralized by now." The Adumbra flower. Xue Qingkong cried out in surprise. She immediately circulated her energy to check her body. Sure enough, the poison in her bones was gone. She smiled in pleasant surprise. Bai Suzhen turned to Yu Qianqiu and asked, "The pill recipe Jade Archive seems to contain the antidote that can completely neutralize the bone-adhering poison, right?" "That's right. However, we're still missing a spiritual herb as the main ingredient. However, the Jade Archive says that it should grow in the demon domain." Yu Qianqiu knew that she wanted to help her clansmen neutralize the bone-adhering poison. However, the Adumbra flower was too precious. It would be a waste to use it just to neutralize the poison. Not to mention, not all of those people were her uncle. He rubbed his nose and smiled. Sister, don't worry. Leave the matter of neutralizing the poison in your clansmen to me. I'll make a trip to the demon domain someday and ask the ghost general to help me look for it. Bai Suzhen nodded. Words of gratitude were no longer necessary between the two of them. However, Yu Qianqiu suddenly thought of something frightening. He couldn't help but frown. Senior Shui, you mean to say that 100 years ago, you started using the great art of extracting primordial spirit on Yanbugui? Doesn't that mean that he has been secretly accumulating his strength for 100 years? They robbed Dong Guangceng of more than 100 million high-grade spirit stones. Bastard! Yu Qianqiu cursed under his breath. He thought, I worked so hard to loot 21 spirit stone mines, but I only got 10 million high-grade spirit stones. In the end, Dong Guangceng's strength was split, and the 100-flower palace benefited from it. Damn it! Yu Qianqiu frowned. If I ask you to take me to the island, can you find the way? Yes. Shui Qingkong said without hesitation. Bai Suzhen frowned, but she didn't say anything. He is so powerful, but he still has to endure. It seems that Yan Bugui's ambition is to conquer the entire cultivation world. Good. Rest well, I won't disturb you anymore. Yu Qianqiu nodded with satisfaction, then said to Bai Suzhen, Sister, I have something to do. You two take your time. With that, he disappeared. Shui Qingkong was taken aback and exclaimed, Ling, He is also at the last phase of the tribulation passing stage. Bai Suzhen's frown didn't loosen. Instead, she asked, Uncle. If I wanted your natal primordial spirit, would you agree? What do you mean? Shui Qingkong was shocked. Bai Suzhen's figure flickered like a phantom, and her fingers formed into a claw as she grabbed onto his head. A white light wrapped around his head, and when she retracted her hand, a small person that looked like Shui Qingkong, who was only a few inches tall, was caught. Bai Suzhen put the natal yuanshan into a spirit stone and put it in her storage pouch. She looked at Shui Qingkong, who was crying on the bed and sighed, Uncle, don't blame me. Since he said that, he must have planned to go overseas. I can stop him, but I won't. Uncle, do you know? His place in my heart is no lighter than my mother's. He is the most important person in my life. I will not allow anyone to bring danger to him. Don't worry, Uncle. When I think he is safe, I will return your natal yuanshan to you. Although her words were sincere, Shui Qingkong was currently suffering from soul-deep pain. Coupled with the injuries on her body, how could she hear what she was saying? Yu Qianqiu didn't go anywhere else, but went to the ethereal palace to find Chu Ping. When the attack on Dong Guangceng was mentioned, he remembered that he promised Chu Ping to bring her master here. Now that Dong Guangceng was gone, who knew if her master was still alive or not? As the saying goes, it's better to get the pain over with as soon as possible. At most, it would be over with time. At that time, little Wu Chou was playing with Chu Ping, and the little guy seemed to like this beautiful sister-in-law very much. When Yu Qianqiu drove him out, he was quite reluctant. This caused Chu Pinger's face to turn red. Who asked Yu Qianqiu to rarely see people? Even if he did, he would pester her to do that kind of thing the moment he came. She could not help but misunderstand Yu Qianqiu's current actions. When Yu Qianqiu told her the bad news that Dong Guangceng was killed, Chu Ping was stunned as if she was struck by lightning. Yu Qianqiu didn't comfort her, but turned around and left. Now was the time for her to vent her anger, and no one could persuade her. After walking out of the ethereal palace with a heavy heart, he stood at the top of the mountain and saw a couple holding hands on the mountainside. It was his parents who were climbing the mountain. A gratified smile appeared on his face. It was his long-cherished wish to let his wife and family live a happy life. Looking into the distance, he could see a circle of purple in the sky, but after he broke through to the middle stage of the core formation realm, he couldn't see it anymore. Yu Qianqiu let out a breath and murmured, "Ping, On Guangsung's death might be hard for you to accept, but it's not necessarily a bad thing for me. Maybe I'm too selfish, but I really don't want you to live in the shadows of On Guangsung and your master for the rest of your life. You're my woman, not anyone's disciple." When Yu Changgue and his wife reached the top of the mountain, Yu Qianqiu told them about Master Chu Ping's misfortune. He begged his parents to comfort her after she calmed down, and he told Bai Suzhen through his divine sense. After making arrangements for Chu Ping, he went to the border of Utopia and took out the Green Destiny Sword. It was also a high-grade offensive magic treasure. The image of Dongfang Chang Ao being invincible with the spear in his hand was still vivid in his mind. Outside the Hundred Flowers Valley, Yu Qianqiu walked in openly with the Hundred Flowers Valley's access token. As he expected, although his arrival caused quite a commotion in the Hundred Flowers Valley, it was nothing much. On Guangsung had been killed, and no one was offering a bounty for his capture anymore. He believed that those itinerant cultivators wouldn't find trouble with him for no reason. The supporting Immortal Island hadn't even solved their own problems, so they wouldn't care about him. The righteous and demonic sects were in a cold war, and no one would act rashly. As for the ones who dared to touch him, it was probably the Daluo sect. However, they still had to give the Hundred Flowers Valley some face, so they wouldn't touch him here. So what if they did touch him? Since he dared to appear openly, he wasn't afraid of the Daluo sect. What he was afraid of was that the Daluo sect wouldn't find trouble with him. From today onwards, he didn't need to be sneaky anymore. Otherwise, once the troubles of the various sects were solved, he would have to hide for the rest of his life. This was the time to make a name for himself. Only by making those who wanted to deal with him fear him could he live openly in the future. Walking on the streets of the Hundred Flowers Valley, Yu Qianqiu let out a depressed breath. The Daluo sect hopes that you can come quickly. I, Yu Qianqiu, need to ignite my anger. I need to ignite your Daluo sect to achieve my glory. Everyone looked over and saw a few people following behind Yan Zhuixing, walking over quickly. Yu Qianqiu walked out of the crowd and cupped his fists from afar. "Brother Yan, long time no see." The two of them walked over and hugged each other passionately, as if their relationship was very close. The performance here was not over yet. 4 people came out from the side of the street and bowed to Yu Qianqiu together, Bai clan, Jing clan, Tan clan, and Wu clan, under the orders of the clan heads, respectfully invite Mr. Yu to visit the 4 major clans. Saying that, the 4 of them took out their invitations. Yu Qianqiu understood the meaning of the 4 major clans. They knew that he was here and were afraid that something bad would happen to him. So, they purposely came to suppress him in front of everyone. He smiled and received the invitations. He cupped his fists and said, "Send my regards to the 4 clan heads. I will definitely visit them in the future." The 4 of them acknowledged and left. The people in the surroundings couldn't stop clicking their tongues. This Yu Qianqiu might have been expelled from supporting Immortal Island, but he was still doing very well. The supporting Immortal Island's disciples in the crowd had an indescribable feeling. Some of them had already left quietly to report what happened here to Quan Deming. Chiu Wuyuan twirled his beard and smiled. This brat's connections were quite wide. He even managed to hook up with the clan heads of the 4 major clans. If he could pull this brat into the 10,000 demons, it would only be beneficial for the 10,000 demons. Not only him, but the various demonic sects and Yan Zhuixing also had the same thought. Hee. Brother you didn't give me face when I invited you for a drink last time. This time, don't reject me again. Chiu Wuyuan chuckled. He was referring to the time when Yu Qianqiu hadn't been expelled from supporting Immortal Island. At that time, he was concerned about the feud between the righteous and demonic sects, so he didn't force Yu Qianqiu. Naturally, he didn't have to worry about that this time. I'll do as you say. Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists and said. The people in the surroundings were pondering. They reckoned that it was only a matter of time before Yu Qianqiu joined the demonic sections. Senior Qiu, that's not right. Yan Zhuixing suddenly interrupted. How can we let Senior Qiu treat us in our Hundred Flowers Palace's territory? Today, I'll be the host at Hundred Flowers Palace to welcome Brother Yu. Why don't you all come and drink with us? Once he said that, the demonic sects cheered. Qiu Weiyuan smiled and didn't say anything. If it was someone else, he would probably retort. However, Yan Zhuixing was different. He was the son of his senior brother Yan Bugue. Yu Qianqiu looked at Yan Zhuixing with a smile. However, he was muttering in his heart, damn it. You're so poor that you have to rob others. Chapter 248. Hee hee. Yan, do you think your Hundred Flowers Valley's rules can interfere with my Daluo sect? Luo Xiaohan was so angry that his eyes were red. Qiu Weiyuan's face darkened when he heard the words Yan. Yan Zhuixing's eyes flashed coldly as he said in a low voice, what do you want then? Young palace master, don't stoop to his level. A clear voice was heard. Everyone looked over and saw that it was Daluo sect's principal elder in the Cultivation Alliance, Zhu Xianxian. Yan Zhuixing cupped his hands and greeted, Elder Zhu. Luo Xiaohan held his breath and greeted, Martial Uncle Zhu. When Zhu Xianxian and Qiu Weiyuan met, they both snorted and turned their heads away, too lazy to look at each other. This was the customary greeting between the righteous and demonic sections. Zhu Xianxian glanced at Yu Qianqiu before turning back to Luo Xiaohan, frowning. The Hundred Flowers Palace is the owner of this place. Why are you causing trouble here? Don't you know the basic rules? Can't you talk after you leave the Hundred Flowers Valley? Everyone understood what he meant. Yu Qianqiu couldn't hide in the Hundred Flowers Valley for the rest of his life. If he wanted revenge, he could do whatever he wanted once he left the Hundred Flowers Valley. Luo Xiaohan's anger subsided. He cupped his hands and said, Martial Uncle, you're right. He turned to Yu Qianqiu and snorted, what's the point of arguing? Leave the Hundred Flowers Valley now if you're so capable. I forgot that you, Yu Qianqiu, are used to being a coward. I think you first hid in Ongquangsong. Then you went to Fuxian Island. Are you going to hide in the Hundred Flowers Valley again? Or are you going to join some demonic sect? Yu Qianqiu sneered, trying to provoke me to leave the Hundred Flowers Valley for revenge. Aren't you afraid of getting beaten up? Are you getting bolder because you have the support of your seniors? Chi! Do you really think that sneak attacks are a skill? Luo Xiaohan sneered. Do I need to use my seniors to deal with you? Come out and try if you have the guts. He did not believe that he, a nascent soul stage cultivator, could not defeat a core formation stage cultivator. He had always believed that the reason why he was beaten up on Hat Island was because the opponent had successfully ambushed him. Those from the Grand Immortal sect shared the same sentiments. Everyone was very quiet. They didn't know if Yu Qianqiu would be provoked out of the Hundred Flowers Valley. What he didn't know was that Yu Qianqiu was worried about Zhu Xianxian and the other masters in the Crossing Calamity stage. Yu Qianqiu had been waiting for him to say this. Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly and said, It's not that I don't want to go out, but I'm afraid that I'll kill you when I go out. If the Daluo sect keeps pestering me, I'll be annoyed to death. Kill me. What a joke. Luo Xiaohan said disdainfully, if you're afraid, just say it. There's no need to find some high-sounding excuse. This is a personal grudge between us. If you really have the ability to kill me, I can guarantee that the Daluo sect will not trouble you in the future. Today, I'll say this. If you have the guts, follow me out of the Hundred Flowers Valley. Yu Qianqiu looked around and said, everyone here heard it. This Luo Xiaohan is not going to let me go. If I don't accept his challenge, he will think that I, Yu Qianqiu, am afraid of him. Since that's the case, please be my witnesses. Today, I will fight him outside the 100 Flowers Valley. Good. Qiu Weiyuan clapped his hands and shouted, "Today is a personal grudge between the two of you. If anyone else dares to interfere, Qiu Weiyuan will be the first to deal with him." He had never seen Yu Qianqiu's capabilities. Today was a rare opportunity. Moreover, Luo Xiaohan himself had said so. It would be a waste not to do him a favor. Yes, if anyone dares to interfere, we won't let him go. The demonic cultivators joined in. They wanted to see what the famous Yu Qianqiu was capable of. Yan Zhuixing's eyes were filled with suspicion. Why did Yu Qianqiu look like he had dug a pit for Luo Xiaohan to jump into? Zhu Xianxian also frowned. If that's the case, then let's go. I've been longing for this day for a long time. Luo Xiaohan smiled ferociously. What's the rush? You don't have to rush to reincarnate. I have some words of advice for you. Yu Qianqiu stared at him and shook his head. He said with infinite melancholy, I, Yu Qianqiu, have never tasted defeat since my debut. Sigh. Using my all-seeing mystic art to fight you is really making a mountain out of a molehill. How about this? I don't want to take advantage of you, so I'll leave you with these words. Since you said that you don't need the help of the elders, then I'll allow the seniors and juniors of the same generation to help you. I don't have any objections. When the crowd heard him say things like never tasted defeat and all-seeing mystic art, they immediately booed. They all thought to themselves, so this Yu Qianqiu is a braggart. When they heard the latter part of his words, they immediately felt that this guy was crazy. It was already good enough for a core formation cultivator to defeat a nascent soul cultivator, but he actually wanted them to find helpers. Wasn't this courting death? Qiu Weiyuan and Yan Zhuixing looked at each other. This guy must have a screw loose. It took them so much effort to nail down his words and prevent the others from Daluo's sect from interfering, but now it was ruined by his own words. Zhu Xianxian was also stunned. He thought he had heard wrong. What they didn't know was that Yu Qianqiu, who was in the middle of the situation, was thinking even more. He didn't care about the outcome of this battle. He knew that regardless of whether he won or lost, Daluo's sect would let him off in the open, but they wouldn't let him off in the dark. After all, he didn't have a backer like supporting Immortal Island anymore. Since that was the case, he would rely on his own strength. Those who were kind would be bullied by others. Usually, the more famous a person was, the less people would dare to provoke them, and the less people would dare to bully them. How can a Luo Xiaohan ignite my infamy? Yu Qianqiu ignored the various expressions of the crowd and glanced at the Daluo sect disciples. Arrogant. Luo Xiaohan sneered. Cut the crap. Come out if you have the guts. With that, he took the lead and walked out of the city gate of the 100 Flowers Valley. Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly and followed. Buzz. The entire 100 Flowers Valley was in an uproar. Yu Qianqiu was really going to fight to the death with the son of the Daluo sect master. In an instant, the crowd surged forward and rushed to the city gate, looking for a good spot to watch the battle. Before long, all the streets of the 100 Flowers Valley became empty. Many of the stalls in the market had been taken away, and those that were confiscated had left their stalls. No one was in the mood to do business now. When almost all the people had left the 100 Flowers Valley, Yan Zhuixing and the people from the Devil's sect followed the leisurely Yu Qianqiu to the city gate. After exiting the 100 Flowers Valley, they saw so many people in the originally secluded forest. It was a little abrupt. Luo Xiaohan was waiting in a relatively flat area. The crowd was centered around him. The forest was full of grass and trees, so it was not practical to walk there. The sword on Yu Qianzhou's back popped out and carried him. After landing in front of Luo Xiaohan, he sheathed his sword and looked around. The shopkeepers of the 4 major families were also here. Donghua Su and his wife also came with a child. Even Fuxian Island's Quan Deming came with a group of people. Just at this moment, Yan Zixia also arrived with an elder with an extraordinary bearing. Yan Zixia still acted as though she did not know him. She did not know who that elder was, but when he landed beside Yan Zhuixing and Qiu Wuyuan, both of them were extremely respectful towards him. Could it be that this person was Yan Bugui? With a clang, Luo Xiaohan rose into the sky with his mid-nascent soul cultivation. He stared down below and sneered, his expression full of contempt. Yu Qianzhou's gaze was fixed on Hong Qi, who was beside Donghua Su. He then raised his head and looked at the sneering guy in the sky. The sword was unsheathed and carried him to the same height. Luo Xiaohan was amused when he saw him riding on the sword empty-handed. He thought, "You're courting death. How dare you come up empty-handed?" Only the people from Fuxian Island knew that it wasn't the case. Yu Qianzhou could not control a flying sword. As expected, when a pile of flying swords flew out of Yu Qianzhou's storage pouch and filled the sky with an imposing aura, they formed an umbrella behind him. Luo Xiaohan's expression froze, and he couldn't smile anymore. Most of the people around were shocked. It was the first time they saw someone controlling so many flying swords at the same time. No wonder he was so arrogant. They didn't know how powerful they were. Zhu Xianxian frowned and began to secretly transmit his voice to the Daluo sect disciples beside him. Yu Qianzhou said with an expressionless face, "Shall we start now?" It was the first time Luo Xiaohan saw someone who could control so many flying swords. To be honest, he was shocked. After calming himself down, he sneered, "It's just a facade." As he spoke, the flying sword in his hand suddenly shot toward his opponent. "Whether it's a facade or not, you'll know once you try." Yu Qianzhou didn't mind his sudden attack at all. He quietly stood on his sword and flicked his finger. 10 flying swords flashed out of the sword umbrella behind him and quickly went to meet the flying swords that were shooting at him. Luo Xiaohan looked at the 90-odd flying swords on the ground and exclaimed softly, "They're all superior-grade flying swords." According to his own estimation, with such a huge difference in their cultivation bases, his attack should have shattered at least a dozen of his opponent's flying swords, even if not all of them had been shattered. Who knew that none of them had been shattered? So they were all superior-grade flying swords. Once bitten, twice shy. Yu Qianzhou finally understood that with his cultivation base, it was impossible for him to fight his opponent head-on. With a pinch of his fingers, the flying swords on the ground immediately flew back to him and circled around him a few times. His 10 fingers pinched together like a lotus, and the 98 flying swords scattered in different trajectories and quickly swarmed towards him. "You really won't shed a tear until you see your own coffin." Luo Xiaohan snorted coldly as he let go of the flying sword in his hand and let it hover in the air in front of his chest. He quickly made a complicated pinch of his fingers and pointed at the tail of the sword. He hurriedly shouted, "Daluo sky-shattering style." The body of the sword trembled and rotated rapidly, transforming into countless sword shadows. He pushed them out with one palm. The number of sword shadows increased, and in the blink of an eye, they formed a sword shield in front of him. It immediately entangled all of the flying swords that Yu Qianzhou had released. After a series of ear-piercing crisp sounds, Yu Qianzhou was forced to give up controlling the 98 flying swords. If he continued to resist, he would definitely be injured again. Seeing that Yu Qianzhou had given up resisting, Luo Xiaohan laughed heartily. With another pinch of his fingers, the spinning range of the sword's shadows shrank. He bounced Yu Qianzhou's flying swords back one by one and kept them into his storage bag. The onlookers felt that it was a pity. Even Qiu Weiyuan and the others who supported Yu Qianqiu from the devil path could not help but sigh. At this moment, Yan Zixia finally revealed a trace of worry in her eyes as she witnessed the situation. The people from supporting Immortal Island, on the other hand, had indescribable expressions on their faces. Although Yu Qianqiu had been expelled from supporting Immortal Island, he was still an outstanding disciple of supporting Immortal Island. His loss had brought shame to supporting Immortal Island. The 4 shopkeepers of the shops from the 4 major clans had received orders before they came. If Yu Qianqiu was defeated and in danger, they were to rescue him at all costs. At this moment, the 4 of them were already ready to make a move. Yan Zhuixing sized up the 2 people who were fighting and felt that something was wrong. It seemed like it shouldn't have ended like this. Because Yu Qianqiu was too calm, it seemed like he did not care about this defeat at all. Did he think that Luo Xiaohan would let him go just like that? Luo Xiaohan stared at the flying sword under Yu Qianqiu's feet. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he teased, "Yu Qianqiu, thank you for the high-grade magic tool you gave me. If you still have it, I might let you go if I'm happy." A burst of laughter came from the Daluo sect's side. Yu Qianqiu stood on the flying sword with his hands behind his back. He squinted his eyes and stared at Luo Xiaohan. He said arrogantly, "You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I, Yu Qianqiu, have never been defeated since my debut. How can I be defeated by a bastard like you? That was just a warm-up. Now, I'll show you how powerful my Xian Qi is. I hope you won't regret it." Today, he was not as low-key as he usually was. Instead, he talked a lot of big words. Only he knew why. Hearing this, Luo Xiaohan laughed again. He said, "All right, bring it on. I want to see how powerful your Xian Qi is." He stopped abruptly before he could finish his sentence. He was dumbfounded. A demonic red light lit up in the sky, and a sea of fire suddenly appeared in the sky. In the middle of it, there was a person looking at him indifferently, as if he was looking at an ant. Who else could it be other than Yu Qianqiu? What was going on? The spectators were shocked. Even those who were standing far away could feel the scorching heat. The flowers and trees around the sea of fire were already emitting wisps of green smoke. The sea of fire had already started burning and was slowly spreading to the surroundings. The shock brought to everyone was indescribable. Qiu Weiyuan swallowed hard and murmured, "What kind of spell is this? Why haven't I heard of it before? Could this be the Xian Qi that Yu Qianqiu mentioned? Senior brother, have you heard of it?" The person he asked was precisely the Flower Palace's Yan Bugui. The latter recovered from his shock and exhaled before he said, "Amazing, I'm able to feel such a high temperature while standing here. How could Yu Qianqiu who's within the flames endure it?" Yan Zhuixing nodded to himself. That's right. He really had something to rely on. No wonder he was so arrogant. Among the crowd, little Hong Qi's eyes shone brightly, and his 2 little hands couldn't help but grab onto his maternal grandparents' clothes. Dong Guisu and his wife looked at each other, and they couldn't conceal the shock in their eyes. In fact, it was not only the 2 of them. The others were the same. After the Luo sect's Zhu Xianxian regained his senses, he winked at the disciples around him, warning them to get ready. Seeing that the disciples were a little timid and did not move for a long time, he could not help but feel annoyed. He took a step forward and wanted to take action himself. Unexpectedly, he heard Qiu Weiyuan's laughter. "Zhu Xianxian, let's set the rules before the duel. If any of Luo Xiaohan's masters make a move, don't blame me, Qiu Weiyuan, for being impolite." Under the crowd's gaze, Qiu Weiyuan laughed heartily. He was going to do Luo Xiaohan a favor today. Yu Qianqiu glanced over and quickly retracted the flames around him, compressing them to an arm's length away from him. He stared at the dumbfounded Luo Xiaohan and said coldly, didn't you want to see how powerful my Xian Qi is? Why aren't you making a move? Since Zhu Xianxian was being watched by Qiu Wuyuan, it was not convenient for him to make a move. He glared at the 6 disciples beside him and harumphed angrily, which was more or less a threat. The 6 of them were also original infant stage disciples. They were supposed to accompany Luo Xiaohan out to play. Although they said they were out to play, they were actually here to protect him. At this moment, they did not dare to hesitate any longer. The consequences were not something they could bear. After exchanging glances, the 6 of them quickly flew away on their swords. Yu Qianzhou glanced at the 6 of them and smiled ferociously. Instantly, his killing intent surged. He had purposely chased after Luo Xiaohan, waiting for the others to make a move. Now was the time to kill, and also the beginning of his fight with the Deluo sect to the death. The speed of the flying sword suddenly increased by a few notches. His 5 fingers formed a claw that was covered with a thin layer of dazzling red flames. It directly pierced through Luo Xiaohan's back like a knife cutting through tofu. There was not the slightest bit of strain in his movements. How could the flaming claws, which had been suppressed to the extreme by Yu Qianzhou, be blocked by a mere human body? Naturally, it was effortless. Luo Xiaohan did not even have the chance to scream. He felt his body stop moving, as if he was hanging on something. Looking down, he saw a flaming claw protruding from his chest, holding a heart, as if it was placed in front of him for him to see. Then, his vision blurred, and he lost consciousness. In the midst of Zhu Xianxian's angry roar, Luo Xiaohan turned into ashes, which were blown away by the wind. A storage pouch was caught by Yu Qianzhou, who threw it into his own. Countless people's faces changed. What a powerful fire spell! Everyone was shocked. This Yu Qianzhou really dared to kill. Wasn't he making an enemy out of the Deluo sect? Did he really think that he could fight against the Deluo sect alone? He was simply courting death. However, the demonic cultivators, starting from Qiu Wuyuan, applauded and cheered. It was impossible for Yu Qianzhou to stay in the righteous sections. A lone cultivator was also weak, so if he wanted to live in peace, he would have to join the demonic sections. How could the demonic cultivators not be happy when they thought about how they would have such a person? Yu Qianzhou, who could control the intensity of the fire with ease and suppress the temperature of the fire, pretended to hold up Luo Xiaohan's bloody heart in front of Zhu Xianxian. Under Zhu Xianxian's furious gaze, the heart was annihilated with the wind. At that moment, 6 flying swords were already flying towards them. Yu Qianzhou faced the sky and let out a long roar. He spread his arms, and his entire body became like the mouth of a spring. Endless raging flames rushed out from his body, surging in all directions like the sea. The flames were monstrous and engulfed the 6 flying swords in an instant. The 6 cultivators immediately felt that they had lost contact with their flying swords. There was no time to think. Running for their lives was more important. The sea of fire was already rushing towards them. However, the speed of the 6 people who had lost their flying swords could not keep up with the speed of the sea of fire. In the blink of an eye, the sea of fire engulfed the 6 people who were scared out of their wits, leaving behind 6 incomparably painful screams that spread in the wilderness. The surrounding people were immediately startled by the surging flames. Could it be that this madman wanted to kill everyone at the same time? Just as everyone was about to escape, the sea of fire quickly retracted. Even the flames on the surrounding vegetation were retracted. When the monstrous flames were retracted back into Yu Qianzhou's body, not a single spark could be seen on the ground. Following that, the flames were retracted. It was a miraculous sight. As for the 6 cultivators who had been swallowed by the sea of fire, there was no longer any trace of them. It was obvious that they had been reduced to ashes. With the crisis averted, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. However, they could not imagine that such a huge and unparalleled flame could be hidden in a person's body. It was simply unimaginable. They were all shocked by the scene just now. A core formation cultivator killed 7 nascent soul cultivators just like that. Brother you're amazing. Qiu Weiyuan gave a thumbs up to Yu Qianqiu, who was still standing in a ball of fire in the air. The people from Devil Dao cheered wildly. However, the people from the righteous Dao felt it was a pity. They all looked towards Fu Xian Island. Why did they expel such a powerful disciple from the sect? Actually, how could Quan Deming feel good in his heart? But what could he say? He could only sigh in his heart. He was originally an outstanding disciple that the sect was prepared to nurture. If it wasn't for Ong Guangcang. Sigh. Actually, this disciple didn't do anything wrong to Fu Xian Island. If they knew that Ong Guangcang's sect would be exterminated, the 4 shopkeepers of the shops of the 4 major clans didn't understand why the 4 clan heads valued Yu Qianqiu so much. But now, it seemed that the 4 clan heads already knew about it. The 4 of them couldn't help but look at each other. Yan Zixia looked at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated expression. However, her father and brother's eyes flashed with a strange light as if they saw a treasure. Yu Qianqiu stared coldly at Zhu Xianxian and said emotionlessly, "Elder Zhu, is this duel fair? If you think it's unfair, why don't you teach me a few moves? I'm willing to learn from you." His tone was calm, but it carried a domineering aura of contempt. He was clearly challenging Zhu Xianxian. Everyone was shocked. A core formation stage cultivator wanted to challenge an elder of the Luo sect, who was in the early stage of tribulation passing. Wasn't he too arrogant? But then they thought about it. Who knew what other secrets this fire spell had? Who knew if there was a more powerful killer move? Otherwise, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't be so arrogant. Brother you're so brave. I can feast my eyes on you again. Ha! Qiu Weiyuan gave a thumbs up and laughed. He turned his head and shouted, "Zhu Xianxian, don't let me down." The people of Diabolism immediately followed suit. Everyone's eyes were focused on Zhu Xianxian. Hearing this, Zhu Xianxian's expression changed. After a long time, he said in a low voice, "Do you think I'm a member of your Diabolism? I won't bully the weak." After saying this, he turned around and left, floating toward the entrance of the 100 Flowers Valley. The people of Diabolism immediately booed. Some people cursed him for being hypocritical and shameless. Hearing the curses behind him, Zhu Xianxian looked calm on the surface, but his heart was bleeding. The Luo sect had lost a lot of face today, but he didn't have the slightest confidence that he could defeat Yu Qianqiu. Anyone who saw the monstrous flames just now would be terrified. Gambling with his life was not worth it. The Luo sect is only a so-so. Yu Qianqiu's words drifted over, almost causing him to vomit blood. He resisted the urge to turn back and quickly entered the 100 Flowers Valley. In fact, Zhu Xianxian didn't know that Yu Qianqiu secretly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Zhu Xianxian had really left. That raging flame technique had consumed most of the fire element stored in his body. Without the support of the fire element, it was impossible for Yu Qianqiu to use the powerful fire art. If Zhu Xianxian turned back now, Yu Qianqiu could only escape. Unfortunately, the monstrous flames just now had already shocked the former. Yu Qianqiu looked around, and the raging flames outside his body were all retracted back into his body. His gaze landed on the child standing between Dong Guisu and his wife, and he directly flew over on his sword. After landing, he sheathed his sword. He stared at Hong Qi and said with a faint smile, "Do you still recognize me?" Chapter 251. Lil Hong Qi's lips twitched. He was obviously a little excited. His master's technique just now was simply too spectacular. His eyes sparkled, and he looked back at his grandfather as if he wanted to say something. In the past, his grandfather had warned him more than once not to let others know that he had a master. Now that his master had come to him, he didn't know how to answer. When Hong Qi first became his disciple, because Yu Qianqiu was still a disciple of Fuxian Island, Dongwu Su was quite satisfied. Later on, Yu Qianqiu became the public enemy of the Cultivation Alliance, which made Dongwu Su's heart jump. He was afraid that he would be implicated, so he often warned his grandson not to tell others about his master. Now that Yu Qianqiu had made a strong appearance and publicly found them in front of everyone, it was obvious that he wanted to expose this hidden disciple. He had seen everything that happened at the scene. Yu Qianqiu's connections and strength were enough to protect his grandson. If he could learn that powerful fire technique, it would be beneficial for him for life. How could Dongwu Su have any objections? He immediately smiled and nodded at his grandson. Lil Hong Qi's face lit up. He knelt on the ground with a plop and kowtowed. Disciple Hong Qi greets Master. I thought you were angry at Master for not looking for you for a long time. Yu Qianqiu helped him up and smiled faintly. He rubbed Lil Hong Qi's head and sized him up. He frowned and said, only level 5 Qi refinement, a little slow. You have to work hard. When you reach the foundation building stage, Master will pass the Starflame Fire Technique to you. Starflame Fire Technique. Lil Hongqi widened his eyes and asked, is that the technique Master used just now? Yu Qianqiu opened his palm, and a ball of flame ignited in his palm. It instantly condensed into a bright red firebird that fluttered in his palm. Of course, he had already restrained the temperature, or else little Hong Qi would not be able to withstand it. Yu Qianqiu smiled. Yes, this is the Starflame Fire technique that Master created. If you want to cultivate it, you have to work hard to improve your cultivation. Hong Qi looked at the cheerful firebird, and his eyes lit up. He nodded. Master, I will definitely work hard to improve my cultivation. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. They didn't know if what Yu Qianqiu said was true or false. Such a heaven-defying technique was actually created by him. That was an incredible talent. The people of Supporting Immortal Island, especially Quan Deming, already knew that Yu Qianqiu was talented. When he was on Supporting Immortal Island, he had created his own alchemy technique. Later on, he even modified the Guiyuan sword technique to cultivate. They didn't expect that he could also create such a powerful fire technique. In other words, it was a great loss for Supporting Immortal Island to expel Ong Guangceng from the sect. Although everyone was shocked, they still envied the young Hong Qi the most. With a master like this, his future was bound to be boundless. Dongwu Su and his wife looked at each other, and they were pleasantly surprised. They were surprised because they didn't know if Yu Qianqiu would be able to avoid the revenge of the exalted sect, and they were delighted because so long as Yu Qianqiu was able to deal with the exalted sect, then their grandson's future would be bright. This was truly a bet that was difficult to choose. This kind of mentality was probably a common problem of parents. Haha. Brother Yu, since when did you accept a disciple? Qiu Wuyuan laughed heartily. Behind him were the siblings Yan Bugui and Yan Zixia, as well as a group of ambitious and ruthless people. Yu Qianqiu retracted the firebird in his palm. He glanced at the people of Supporting Immortal Island and said with a smile, I accepted him previously. I wanted to bring him back to Supporting Immortal Island, but who knew that even I would be expelled from Supporting Immortal Island? Coincidentally, the fire art I comprehended was at a critical juncture. I didn't have time to care about him, so I let him cultivate on his own at such a young age. These words almost made Quan Deming and the others vomit blood. It turned out that this guy was already comprehending this overbearing fire art when he was expelled from the sect. If he wasn't expelled from the sect, wouldn't Supporting Immortal Island have another peerless art? The people of Supporting Immortal Island were depressed. The people from other sects also looked at them as if they were looking at fools. Chiao Weiyuan also glanced at the people of supporting Immortal Island when he heard this. He rejoiced inwardly. Fortunately, that group of idiots had expelled Yu Qianqiu from the sect. Otherwise, if supporting Immortal Island had such a tyrannical technique, wouldn't the demonic path be suppressed? However, Chiao Weiyuan was in a good mood today. The Luo sect had suffered a loss, supporting Immortal Island had lost face, and even the entire righteous path had lost face. He couldn't help but laugh. Brother Yu, you don't need to lower yourself to those people's level. If you are interested, my 10,000 demons will welcome you with open doors. As long as you are willing to join my 10,000 demons, I guarantee that you won't have to suffer from those cowards. Hearing this, the people of the evil path's eyes brightened. They all sent out warm invitations. My blood demon palace warmly welcomes you. The corpse sect awaits your arrival. The invitations of the evil path sects immediately changed the faces of the righteous path sections. I appreciate everyone's good intentions. However, after experiencing 2 sects, I have suffered a lot of cowardice. From now on, I don't want to join any sects of the righteous path or the evil path. I just want to be independent. Yu Qianqiu clasped his hands at everyone and asked Hongqi, Hongqi, are you willing to accompany Master to travel around the world? Yes. Hongqi nodded. He didn't know what was good or bad. He just agreed based on his intuition. Yu Qianqiu smiled satisfactorily. In fact, there was no need to travel around the world with him. It was just to deal with people's rejection. He then said to Donghua Su and his wife, today, I will take Hongqi with me. Are you two willing? The two looked at each other. Although they were reluctant, they still bowed together and said, thank you, sir. Seeing that he didn't want to join the evil path, the people of the evil path were a little disappointed. However, they didn't force him. The righteous path also felt a little comfortable. Brother Yu. Seeing that they were almost done talking, Yan Zhuixing interrupted and pointed to the old man beside him and introduced, this is my father. Yu Qianqiu sized up the old man in front of him with a serious expression. Sure enough, he had the air of a formidable character. He immediately bowed and said, I've long heard of Senior Yan's great name. It is my honor to be able to meet you today. Ha! Yu Qianqiu, you are friends with my junior brother and Xing. There is no need to be so polite. Yan Bugue waved his hand and said with a smile, my 100-flower palace doesn't belong to the righteous path or the evil path. We have always been neutral. Since you are not interested in the righteous path or the evil path, why don't you come to my 100-flower palace? Although my 100-flower palace isn't a big sect, it can more or less avoid some trouble. Yu Qianqiu, are you interested? Hearing that, Yan Zixia's eyes flickered indeterminately. On the other hand, Donghua Su and his wife were looking forward to it. If Yu Qianqiu joined the 100-flower palace, then they wouldn't have to be separated from their grandson. The other sects were stunned. Could it be that the 100-flower palace will take advantage of him in the end? But that's good. It's a good thing as long as this person doesn't fall into the hands of the evil path. Yu Qianqiu's heart skipped a beat. He rubbed his nose and didn't answer for a long time. His face was full of smiles as his gaze swept back and forth between the Yan father and son. When his gaze fell into their eyes, he instantly felt as if all his secrets were seen through. Yan Bugue coughed lightly and broke the awkwardness, there is no hurry to answer. Why don't you stay in the 100 Flowers Valley and think about it slowly? Ha! Yu Qianqiu chuckled lightly and shook his head. The 100-flower palace is neither righteous nor evil, so it's a good place to go. Unfortunately, Senior Yan and Brother Yan are both people who do great things. I've said that I only want to be independent, so I truly don't dare to get involved in your matters. The others didn't think much of it and thought that it was just Yu Qianqiu's excuse. However, Quan Deming from Fuxian all suddenly stared at the father and son pair. Yan Bugue and Yan Juixing's expressions changed, and the latter's gaze burned with anticipation. Brother Yu, what do you mean? Why don't I understand? Brother Yan, do you really want me to make it clear in front of all the sects? That isn't good, right? Yu Qianqiu replied with a question, and then he shook his head and sighed. What if I make it difficult for your 100-flower palace? Wouldn't it hurt the friendship between us? His words had already put the 100-flower palace in a difficult position. If he didn't say it, all the sects would definitely think that the 100-flower palace was hiding something, and they couldn't help but associate it with the 100-flower palace. Say it. If he really knew something, then it was something that couldn't be exposed. Yu Qianqiu, just say what you want to say. Don't make everyone suspicious. Yan Bugue frowned. But you better not speak nonsense. My 100-flower palace isn't that easy to mess with. As expected, the older the wiser. His words not only smoothed things over, but also contained a half-threat. Everyone was puzzled, and only Quan Deming's face was gloomy. Yu Qianqiu raised his brows, and he snorted. Senior Yan, I can distinguish the severity of some things, and I know what to say and what not to say. But I hate it when people threaten me the most. There was a hint of coldness in his words. Yu Qianqiu turned his gaze to Quan Deming, and he shook his head and sighed. Elder Quan, I've always thought that Fu Xian Island was really the strongest sect in the cultivation world. But some time ago, I accidentally learned some things, and then I realized that there's always someone better than you. Some hidden forces are the real number one in the world. Sigh. Looks like the cultivation world is going to be chaotic soon. Someone wants to unify the righteous and demonic sects, and become the first person in history. Ong Guangzhong is a good example. I don't want to get involved in these things, so it's better for me to stay away from them, so that I won't be affected. Chapter 252. It was easy to imagine the commotion caused by his words. As long as one wasn't an idiot, they would be able to understand what he meant. According to what he said, there was a hidden force in the cultivation world that was even more powerful than supporting Xian Island. This force wanted to unify the entire cultivation world. Ong Guangzhong was killed by it, and this force was secretly controlled by Baihua Palace. Everyone had different expressions. They were both doubtful and in disbelief. Actually, if these words were said during normal times, the father and son of the Yan clan wouldn't have taken it to heart. They would just push the blame onto others and push the blame onto others. Who could do anything to them if there was no evidence? Unfortunately, the supporting Immortal Island had suddenly barged in and fought with them. Others might not know what Yu Qianqiu was talking about, but the supporting Immortal Island had suffered a loss, so how could they not know? The worst thing was that even if they were stronger than the supporting Immortal Island, the key to determining their strength was the number of experts at the final stage of the crossing tribulation stage. They only had 4 experts, while the supporting Immortal Island had at least 20 experts. These 20 experts were the key to establishing the supporting Immortal Island as the number 1 expert in the world. It didn't matter if Yu Qianqiu knew about it or not. But one thing was for sure. This guy pretended to be innocent, but he was actually looking for trouble on purpose. Otherwise, he wouldn't have exaggerated the matter. Yan Bugue was furious. Yu Qianqiu, you are obviously slandering Baihua Palace. What are your intentions? Humph. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly. I don't have any intentions, and I didn't mention your Baihua Palace by name. I don't think Baihua Palace's lord knows about this. He later asked Shui Qin Kong about some details. He guessed that it was done secretly by the Yan father and son, and Baihua Fairy didn't know about it. Baihua Palace controlled a group of powerful forces, but Baihua Palace's lord didn't know about it. This was a bit strange. 10,000 demons. Qiu Weiyuan's eyelids twitched. He looked at Yen Bugui suspiciously. Could this be a trap set up by the sect that even I don't know about? He couldn't help but think of the oath he made when Ong Kwang-sung's clan was destroyed. If it was really related to 10,000 demons, wouldn't he die a horrible death? Supporting Immortal Island's Quan Deming's eyes flickered. He also suspected that this was the Palace of Myriad Demons plot. If what Yu Qianqiu said was true, how could Baihua Fairy, as the Palace Lord of Baihua Palace, not know about it? Wasn't this clearly showing that the one surnamed Yen was guarding against supporting Immortal Island, or rather, targeting supporting Immortal Island? Yen Xia bit her lips. Chapter 253. Wasn't the natal primordial spirit stripping technique lost a long time ago? Qiu Wuyuan's face darkened. This technique was a nightmare for cultivators, regardless of whether they were righteous or evil. Once they were controlled, they wouldn't be able to resist at all and would be at the mercy of others. Everyone's face changed. They didn't expect such a thing to appear. The father and son of the Yen family didn't look good either. They didn't know if it was because of Yu Qianqiu's nonsense or because his secret was exposed. Quan Deming glanced at him. He was more concerned about what would happen next. He asked in a deep voice, Yu Qianqiu, what's the secret? Yu Qianqiu looked in a certain direction and smiled bitterly with lingering fear. To be honest, I'm afraid that after I say it, someone will kill me today. I'm not afraid of ordinary people, but the hidden strength of that person is too strong. If he sends 2 experts at the final stage of passing tribulation, I'm afraid I won't be able to keep my life. Go ahead and say it. I'll make it clear today. I don't care about other places, but here, anyone who wants your life will have to go through my supporting Immortal Island first. Unless everyone in my supporting Immortal Island dies, no one will be able to touch a single hair of yours. Don't worry and speak boldly. After Quan Deming finished speaking, a few disciples of supporting Xian Island immediately guarded around Yu Qianqiu. They looked around like tigers watching their prey. Hey! I'm relieved with Elder Quan's words. Yu Qianqiu sighed and continued. Those 2 said that they attacked the spirit stone mines of Daluo sect and Ong Kwang-sung to test their coordination. After killing Ong Kwang-sung, the master felt that it was enough and made a plan to unify the cultivation world. He wanted to create some trouble between supporting Xian Island and the 10,000 demons. It would be best if the 2 sects fought each other. As long as the 2 sects were in chaos, the righteous and evil sects would be in chaos. When the strength of the cultivation world was almost exhausted, we could seize the opportunity and use the natal primordial spirit stripping technique to firmly control the cultivation world. After listening to them, I jumped in fright. I didn't dare to stay there any longer. After the 2 people who were talking left, I sneaked back into the room. But I have a bad habit. I can't control my curiosity. Later, I couldn't help but sneak into the valley and witness a great battle. At this point, Quan Deming had already guessed what he was going to say. His face was gloomy and he didn't say anything. Qiu Wuyuan couldn't help but ask, "Don't stop, brother Yu. Who fought who? Tell me." Yu Qianqiu nodded with a wry smile. One day, I was hiding there when I saw Elder Dongfang of supporting Xian Island leading 50 crossing tribulation elders to the valley. I thought it was strange. But this guy actually knew a lot of things, especially about the battle between Dongfang Chang, A.O. and the people in the valley. Supporting Xian Island was the first to believe it. Yen Bugue looked around and said in a deep voice, "Why are you all looking at us? Even if what Yu Qianqiu said is true, did he say that we were the ones who did it?" Everyone was stunned. They didn't expect Yen Bugue to deny it even now. Qiu Wuyuan didn't expect his senior brother to be so shameless. Quan Deming sneered, "Yu Qianqiu, since you've said it like this, why don't you just tell us who the mastermind is?" Yu Qianqiu, don't go overboard with your nonsense. Yen Bugui's tone and expression were clearly threatening the witness. Just say what you want. No one will dare to do anything to you. Quan Deming said in disdain. Yu Qianzhou's gaze paused on Yen Zixia. After a long time, he shook his head and sighed, I've forgotten who the mastermind is. Everyone was stunned. Yen Bugui laughed and said, I already said this has nothing to do with us, but you don't believe me. Humph. Let's go. The members of the Flower Palace flashed through the sky with swagger. Only Yen Zixia glanced deeply at Yu Qianzhou before she left. She probably thought that Yu Qianzhou had intentionally let them all for her sake. Everyone didn't know what Yu Qianzhou was up to. It wouldn't make sense if he said he was afraid of Yen Bugui. As long as he testified, they wouldn't let him go. Letting him go would be the most dangerous thing. Yu Qianzhou sneered to himself. What good does it do me if you catch him? I've forced him into a dead end and left him a way out. As long as he's not an idiot, he'll run away the moment he returns to White Flower Valley. By then, the tens of thousands of people in his hands will be of great use. It should be enough to stir up chaos in the cultivation world. Chaos is good. I like it. Why didn't you say it? Quan Deming frowned. Are you afraid that Fuxian Island can't protect you? He had already prepared an excuse for this. He shook his head and sneered, protect me. Even if that's the case, Fuxian Island has already abandoned me once when I was in danger and needed protection the most. How can I trust them? Chiu Wuyuan looked him up and down and asked doubtfully, are you that afraid of death? From what I know, you've always been bold. Times have changed. I thought I had a good master who could protect me. Now, I have to rely on myself. How can I not be careful? I still want to live for 2 more years. Yu Qianzhou mocked himself. He took out a jade archive and handed it to Quan Deming, saying, this is the route I memorized when I went to that island the last time. If you want to go there, you must be careful. That island is truly filled with experts. It's not a lie. If Senior Chiu is interested, you can make a copy and take a look. Alright, this is all I can do. Wait. Quan Deming had a question that he wanted to clarify. This matter was very important to Fuxian Island, so he stopped him and asked, you just said that Baihua Palace Lord probably doesn't know about this. What makes you so sure that Baihua Fairy doesn't know about this? Not to mention him, even Chiu Wuyuan wanted to clarify this matter. Chapter 254. To supporting Xian Island, the Guan family was the strongest existence that ruled the entire island. Although Baihua Fairy had been expelled from supporting Xian Island, she was still Guan Dinghai's daughter. Regarding this, the decision-makers of supporting Xian Island couldn't help but consider it carefully. But now that the so-called heroes killed more than 30 tribulation-passing stage elders of supporting Xian Island, it created a lot of pressure for Feng Xiangtian and the others who wanted to side with Guan Dinghai's daughter. After all, there were voices from other factions in supporting Xian Island, and they had to give an explanation to the disciples of supporting Xian Island. This was why supporting Xian Island had to keep the news under wraps even after more than 30 people were killed. It was hard to make a decision without a thorough investigation. Guan Dinghai said that if this matter was related to his daughter, he would personally deal with her. But as someone who was raised by the Guan family, he had to consider the Guan family's interests. Otherwise, why would they help you? Now that Yu Qianzhou said that Baihua Fairy didn't know anything, it immediately attracted Quan Deming's attention. He believed that as long as Baihua Fairy wasn't related to this matter, the sect master and the others would be able to do whatever they wanted. Chiu Wuyuan was concerned about this issue because he was thinking from the perspective of the 10,000 demons. If this matter really had nothing to do with Baihua Fairy, and it was all planned by the Yen father and son, then the 10,000 demons would be at a disadvantage. Who didn't know that Bai Hua Palace was able to stand tall in the cultivation world without falling because of the secret attention of the number one sect of the righteous and demon path? Now that Bai Hua Palace was secretly planning to control the entire cultivation world of the Hua Xia Empire, this was a matter that caused public anger. Everyone was waiting to see how to deal with it. Think about it, Bai Hua Fairy, who was supported by supporting Xian Island, didn't know anything, but Yen Bugui, who was supported by the 10,000 demons, was secretly causing trouble. Who wouldn't suspect that the 10,000 demons were behind this? Even he himself was a bit suspicious. Actually, the internal situation of the 10,000 demons was similar to that of supporting Xian Island. It was also a situation where Yen family's influence was the strongest. Even the decision-makers couldn't do anything. But if Bai Hua Fairy was also involved, it would be much easier. They were both the number one sects of the righteous and demon path. For the benefit of both sects, what couldn't be discussed? Was there anything in the cultivation world that couldn't be solved by two families? That's why Qiu Wuyuan is hoping that Bai Hua Fairy is also one of the masterminds behind this. With regards to this, Yu Qianqiu had already thought of it. He absolutely could not allow supporting Immortal Island and 10,000 demons to find common interests. These two sects were the mainstays of both the righteous and demonic sections. If they did not fall into chaos, the cultivation world would not fall into chaos. It would be difficult for the heroes that he led to stand out. That's why Bai Hua Fairy can't get involved in this, even if it's related to her. She has to be cleared of any involvement. Yu Qianqiu pondered for a moment and said, "When I was hiding in the valley, I overheard the conversation between Yan Jueixing and his men." The surrounding people frowned. Although they didn't say anything, many people rolled their eyes. They didn't say anything in front of the other party. Now that the other party had left, they directly reported the other party's name without a reminder. What was this? How could they know that Yu Qianqiu wanted to let them go? What did they talk about? Quan Deming hurriedly asked. He was hoping that Yu Qianqiu would expose Bai Hua Fairy in front of everyone. Nothing else was important. They were talking about spirit stones. Yan Jueixing's men asked him why they couldn't get more from Bai Hua Palace if they didn't have enough spirit stones. Yan Jueixing was very unhappy at the time, so he warned them to hide well in the valley and not let anyone from Bai Hua Palace know of their existence. Because Bai Hua Palace's master doesn't know about the father and son duo, they couldn't get more spirit stones from Bai Hua Palace. Using a large amount of spirit stones would cause Bai Hua Palace's master to be suspicious, and might even be discovered by supporting Immortal Island. Because of this, he auctioned off the 5 divine craftsmen's treasures and arranged for people to rob on Guangceng and Aluo sect spirit stone mines. At this point, Yu Qianqiu looked around at everyone. From their conversation, we can tell that they're in dire need of spirit stones, but Bai Hua Palace's master doesn't know about them either. Quan Deming sighed in relief. Looking at everyone's expression, Qiu Wuyuan scowled. So the 5 divine craftsmen's treasures that were auctioned off came from Bai Hua Palace. They didn't come from Bai Hua Palace, they came from the Yen father and son duo. Quan Deming immediately corrected him. Qiu Wuyuan glanced at him and didn't say anything else. This matter is related to everyone's benefits, explaining it would only cause misunderstandings, so now isn't the time to argue. Everyone, I'll be leaving first. Yu Qianqiu clasped his fist at everyone, then gestured for Dong Wusu and his wife to bring Hong Qi back first. After such a thing happened, no one asked him to stay for a drink anymore. At the entrance of Hundred Flowers Valley, Yu Qianqiu noticed that the shopkeepers of the 4 major clans had followed him. Seeing that there was no one around, he immediately waved at the 4 of them, and they quickly came over to greet him. Yu Qianqiu said to Wu Clan's shopkeeper, "Help me send a message to your clan master, ask him to wait for me at Wu Clan, I'll go look for him in a few days and fulfill my promise to him." The 4 of them looked at each other and didn't understand what was going on. Wu Clan's shopkeeper clasped his fist with a little doubt and said, "Mr. Yu." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and interrupted, "You don't have to ask too much, just tell your clan master my words, he will naturally know what I mean." Finishing his words, he glanced at the returning sects and flashed into Hundred Flowers Valley. In Dongwa Su's courtyard, a family of 3 was waiting for him. After Yu Qianqiu came in, he looked around for a while and said, "Mr. Dongwa, it's not safe for you to stay here anymore, it's better for you to leave with me." The couple looked at each other, then Dongwa Su clasped his fist and said, "We appreciate Mr.'s good intentions, but if we follow Mr., we might be a burden to Mr. Mr., it's better for you to leave with Hong Chi first. The world is so big, we can just find a place to hide, and it won't be easy for others to find us. Don't think too much. It's not what you think. We're not going to escape." Yu Qianqiu glanced at little Hong Chi, who was looking at his grandparents reluctantly. He immediately raised his hand and pointed at the house, saying in an unquestionable tone, "Now, pack up everything that you can take with you. I'll send you to a safe place." After saying that, he saw that the couple was still a little conflicted, so he shouted in a stern tone, "Don't hesitate anymore. Pack up immediately." Regardless of whether they were willing or not, seeing that Yu Qianqiu was a little angry, the couple immediately followed his instructions for the sake of their grandson. After the couple was ready, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and sent the family of 3 into Utopia. Then, he walked through all the rooms inside and out. He took away all the tables, chairs, paintings, tea sets, pots and pans, and even the bedding and quilts. When he returned to Utopia, Dongwa Su and his family were dumbfounded as they looked at the pile of things on the ground. Guan Yu, who had received the summons, quickly brought a few people over. Yu Qianqiu pointed at Hong Chi and said, "His name is Hong Chi, and he's my disciple. Bring him to the military camp. Put in some effort and strictly supervise his cultivation. Don't show any mercy. After his cultivation breaks through to the foundation establishment stage, I'll bring him to Ethereal Palace to personally teach him." After saying that, he pointed at Dongwa and his wife and said, "These are Hong Chi's maternal grandparents. Help them move the things on the ground away and build a house for them in the south that's about to be reclaimed." In the future, Utopia's self-sufficient farming will be handed over to Mr. Dongwa. Got it. Guan Yu sized up the 3 of them and immediately ordered his subordinates to carry out the orders. Dongwa Su and his wife looked around and felt like they were in a dream. They were so shocked that they couldn't say a word. However, Yu Qianqiu disappeared from where he was. Chapter 255. Inside Baihua Palace's main hall, there was no one on the left or right. Only a dignified and beautiful woman was sitting in the middle. There was a row of empty chairs beside her. If Yu Qianqiu knew that this beautiful woman was that old man Yan Bugui's wife, he wouldn't be surprised. The cultivation world was the same as the mortal world. All women cherished their looks, and in the cultivation world, only women would be willing to spend so much of their cultivation to slow down the aging of their looks. What men care about is strength. Their logic is that as long as they are stronger than others, what's there to be afraid of not having a woman? That's why it's common for Tao companions to be old men with young wives. After Baihua Fairy received her subordinates' report, she dismissed her subordinates and sat alone on her throne, recalling everything that happened in the past. For that man, she didn't hesitate to fall out with her father, was expelled from the sect, worked hard to get to where she is today, and even gave birth to a son and a daughter for him. She thought it was worth it, but that man actually hid it from her for over 100 years. No one could understand the sorrow she was feeling right now. Yan Zixia slowly walked into the main hall. Her gaze fell on her mother's hands that were tightly gripping the chair. She called out, "Mother." Baihua Fairy looked up, squeezing out a loving smile. It's good that she has a daughter to accompany her. Her mouth opened and closed a few times before she spoke, trying to be as calm as possible. "Did your father and brother both leave?" Yan Zixia bit her lips and nodded dejectedly. Then she heard her mother let out a long sigh. At this time, Yen Bugue and Yen Zixia were leading a group of people on their flying tools, quickly heading east. Their destination was naturally the island where they were hiding their strength. For them, that was the safest place. Yen Zixia's expression was twisted as she gritted her teeth. You Qiancho, I won't forgive you. Yen Bugue looked at his son with a serious expression, not sure if the force he worked so hard to build up could withstand the storm that's about to come. He sighed, exposed too early, all my efforts wasted, ha. Your mother must hate me to death right now. In Fuxian Island, Feng Xiangtian was worried about the death of more than 30 elders. The elders from the other factions were already pressuring him. The pressure was huge. When he received Quan Deming's report, he was stunned. Yu Qiancho had actually created another fire spell. With his core formation stage cultivation, he killed 7 Daluo sect's nascent soul stage disciples in a row in the 100 Flowers Valley and challenged the Daluo sect's tribulation stage elder. The elder fled in fear. Yu Qiancho's name shook the cultivation world with a single battle. Feng Xiangtian stood there expressionlessly for a long time, and he sighed in his heart. Looks like I didn't make a mistake back then, what a pity. It was useless to lament the loss of such a talent. After all, he was the one who had personally expelled him from the sect. After a moment of silence, his spirits rose. It was good that this matter had nothing to do with senior sister. Feng Xiangtian looked at the injured Dongfang Chang Ao and waved to the people in front of him, follow me to Heaven Heart Pavilion. He immediately threw the matter of Yu Qiancho to the back of his mind. To him and Fuxian Island, there were more important things to do. Without the intervention of Yen Clan, 100 Flowers Palace was Fuxian Island's 100 Flowers Palace. There was also the hero who dared to attack Fuxian Island. A series of matters needed to be handled quickly. In Wu Clan's ancestral hall, after receiving the news from the shop in the 100 Flowers Valley, Wu Sihai laughed and said to the 3 clan masters, this kid finally appeared. We don't have to look around anymore. Sigh. I really don't know what to say about this kid. It seems like wherever he goes, he will create earth-shattering incidents. I've never seen him in peace. Is he talking about fulfilling his promise about going to Demon Domain? Bai Clan's clan master, Bai Shouji, asked. That's right. Wu Sihai nodded with a smile, this is what he promised. Since he is coming, we don't have to rush to the 100 Flowers Valley. Tan Clan's clan master, Tan Ruchang, said. The leader of the Jing clan, Jing Feihong, nodded and said, he said he'll be here in a few days. We shouldn't have to wait too long. Let's get ready here and wait for him. The 4 of them nodded. After Yu Qiancho arrived at the State Pillar General's residence, he asked Shi Xiaotian about the recent situation. He learned that Fuxian Island sent another nascent soul state preceptor to protect the emperor and the emperor didn't do anything to the general's residence. It was obvious that the development of the situation wasn't deviating from his original guess. Just think about it, Fuxian Island was already busy with their own matters, how could they have the time to care about the secular world, at least in the near future? It seemed like his operation in the cultivation world had many effects. First, not only did he divert Fuxian Island's attention from the secular world, but he also ensured that his plan in the secular world was carried out. Second, he diverted the cultivation world's attention from him. Now, everyone's attention was probably on the father and son from Yen clan and the forces behind them. The matter of wanting to kill him had stopped. Third, he suppressed and attacked the fake heroes. Fourth, his plan to disrupt the cultivation world and exhaust the strength of the cultivation world could be carried out steadily. This would reduce the pressure on the rise of his heroes to the minimum. Fifth, after the battle in the 100 Flowers Valley, he made the Starflame fire technique famous. Ordinary sects probably wouldn't dare to provoke him. Even if there was, it would be the Daluo sect. However, even if they didn't come looking for him, he would still go looking for them. After understanding the general situation, Yu Qianqiu carefully checked the defense of the general's residence. Although he felt that no one would come looking for trouble, since Shi Wenguang had entrusted his family to him, he had to be careful. If there was an accident, it would disappoint Shi Wenguang. On the way, he met Bao Wanshi and Situ Hui. The two women were now very respectful to him. The incident that night had completely shocked them. This Mr. Yu was not an ordinary person. After finding the heroes, who were secretly guarding the general's residence, Yu Qianqiu greatly encouraged the 10 of them. He asked them to continue to work hard and stick to their posts. He also gave them abnormally generous rewards. After that, he still dressed up as a servant and leisurely went to Wanhualu. Once he arrived at the courtyard of Wanhualu, he walked around the lush greenery and saw the Enchantress of 100 Charms leaning against the window of the attic and looking at him with a smile. Yu Qianqiu suddenly felt a headache. After he went up to the attic, he still bowed respectfully and said, "Master's wife." The Enchantress of 100 Charms' waist that was as soft as a water snake came close to him, forcing him to take a few steps back. Then, she laid her soft arms on his shoulder and breathed into his ear. She smiled charmingly and said, "Yu Qianqiu, you're really good at scheming. Tell me honestly, how many secrets do you have that you haven't told your master's wife?" Yu Qianqiu coughed a few times and took the opportunity to turn to the opposite side of the table. After the two of them were separated by the table, he stopped coughing and said with a bitter smile, "Master's wife, you're too serious. I do have a few secrets, but not as many as you think." Although he believed in the Enchantress of 100 Charms' feelings for House Sanxi and that she did not have any evil intentions towards him, he would not go so far as to reveal all of his secrets to her. The saying that the human heart was unpredictable was the truth. There were also different levels of people he believed in. At least in his heart, the Enchantress of 100 Charms was far from the level of Bai Suzhen. There were very few women that a man could entrust everything to. Hearing this, the Enchantress of 100 Charms' eyes seemed to be free of charge as she threw them over one after another. Wrapped in red muslin, her plump buttocks were sitting on the table. A fair and slender thigh slid out of the muslin and was lifted up to place on the table. It was very dazzling, especially the scenery under her skirt, which was faintly discernible. Yu Qianqiu felt that his nose was going to bleed, so he quickly turned his head to the side. The Enchantress of 100 Charms pulled her entire body onto the table and posed seductively. She giggled and said, "Not many secrets. Let's not talk about the hero from before. Now, there's the starflame fire technique that could actually force Zhu Xianxian, who was in the tribulation stage, to run away. Yu Qianqiu, you really surprise me endlessly." As she said this, she swung out a fair and fleshy leg and pointed at Yu Qianqiu's chest with her vermilion toe. She said, "You dare to say that the new talent assembly that was held by the supporting Immortal Island wasn't disrupted by others because of you? Also, how did the supporting Immortal Island know the location of the valley have nothing to do with you?" Yu Qianqiu coughed a few more times and went around to the other side, avoiding the toe that was pointing at his chest. He forcefully explained, "That was purely an accident. Who are you trying to fool?" The Enchantress of 100 Charms rolled her eyes and placed her hands on the table. She puffed out her plump chest and snorted, "What a good scheme. I originally wanted to see who was the real and fake hero, and who was more powerful. Great, you caused trouble for the supporting Immortal Island and caused them to lose more than 30 tribulation stage elders for nothing. Then, you ran to the 100 Flowers Valley and caused a ruckus. You're pushing the supporting Immortal Island to be the vanguard. Fortunately, I knew some things beforehand. Otherwise, how would I know that a little fellow like you actually had so many crooked thoughts? Sigh. I'm depressed. How Wu Wei is such an honest person. How did he teach a little fox like you?" Yu Qianqiu chuckled at the side. He didn't bother to explain and tacitly agreed to it. He thought to himself, how can it be so simple? I'm aiming for the whole cultivation world. Master's wife, you can slowly experience it. Little fox, you're feeling guilty, right? The enchantress of 100 charms raised her hand and swiped her finger across her red lips. She asked lazily, you don't come to me for no reason. Little fox, tell me the truth. What did you come to me for? He needed to borrow the Allure Beauty's information network to keep an eye on the situation of the cultivation world. With the strength of the Yen father and son, he couldn't let others exterminate them too easily, but he also couldn't let others stop. He had to know his limits and act according to the situation at the crucial moment. He had to see when he needed to intervene. In short, he wanted the cultivation world to keep fighting until he could expose his strength. The Allure Beauty was startled. She pulled up the red veil to cover the split of her legs and retracted the seductive look on her face. She nodded and said, that's not a problem. You can come to me at any time to get the latest news. Then I'll leave it to you, Masteress. I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. Yu Qianqiu bowed and wanted to leave. He really didn't dare to stay any longer. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself and do something shameful. Wait. The Allure Beauty stopped him. She frowned and said, you said your master's grave just now. Can you tell me where he is buried? Yu Qianqiu paused for a moment. He shook his head and said to her apologetically, Masteress, that place involves some people who don't want to show their faces. It's not convenient for me to tell you right now. But, I can promise you that after my master's death is avenged, I'll personally bring you there. I understand. A trace of disappointment flashed across the Allure Beauty's face. Yu Qianqiu turned around and quickly left. The Allure Beauty moved her body down from the table. Her eyes inadvertently glanced at the finger marks on her thigh. Thinking about the situation just now, a rare flush appeared on her face. Her breathing quickened. She looked out of the window and muttered, when love is a thing of the past. At the western border, there were many military camps. Because the flames of war at the border had been extinguished, it became lively again. There were many large and small markets around the border. Various countries began to trade with each other. The civilians and merchants who wandered here finally enjoyed the value of peace. Shi Tian was dressed in a military uniform. He led a group of people to the market to buy things that would be used for construction. The Pillar of State General ordered the construction of barracks to replace the flexible tents from before. It seemed that he intended to stay here for a long time. Shi Tian was followed by 2 soldiers who had not spoken a word since the beginning. These 2 soldiers were none other than the 10 members of the underworld that Yu Qianqiu had sent to protect the Pillar of the State General. Shi Wingguang was worried about his son's safety. Thus, he sent 2 people to follow him. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the market. A servant dressed in black clothes and a black hat blocked the path of Shi Tian and the others. A group of soldiers wanted to chase him away, but they were blocked by Shi Tian. Who else could this servant be other than Yu Qianqiu? Shi Tian looked at the 2 people beside him. Both of them were calm. It was obvious that they already knew that Yu Qianqiu was coming. He quickly walked over and was about to greet him when he saw Yu Qianqiu bowing first. Second young master, Madam has asked me to deliver a letter to master. Shi Tian was taken aback. He immediately understood that Yu Qianqiu did not want to attract attention. He smiled and said, Come, follow me to see master. Under the watchful eyes of the surrounding merchants, Yu Qianqiu followed Shi Tian towards the barracks. Passing through the gate guarded by the soldiers, they entered the barracks. Yu Qianqiu got rid of his servants and looked around. Suddenly, he saw a crowd moving in the direction of the training ground. He could not help but ask, Shi Tian, what's going on over there? Shi Tian looked over and sighed, Yesterday, a general named Zhang Ping violated the rules of the army. He led his men to pillage the state of Wei and almost caused a war between the two countries. He then looked at the blazing sun in the sky and sighed, "For the sake of military discipline, the general who violated the rules will be executed at noon." AI. He was a talented general. What a pity. Oh. Hearing his regretful tone, Yu Qianzhou asked as they walked, "Who is this Zhang Ping? Why does young general think so highly of him?" Shi Tian walked beside him and said in a heavy voice, "Zhang Ping is a local. When he was young, his house was plundered by the Wei army. He was the only one who did not die but was on the verge of death. When my father was passing by with his army, he saved him and has been by his side ever since. He started fighting with the army at the age of 14 and has been through more than 10 years. In every battle, he was the vanguard of his men and was wounded countless times. It is a miracle that he is still alive today. Perhaps it is because of his tragic childhood, Zhang Ping has become a bloodthirsty and ruthless person. His men have never taken any captives in battle and have killed them all. AI. My father did not have the heart to do so, but this is a matter of great importance. Now that the borders cannot be in chaos, my father can only use him as a warning to the others and to uphold military discipline." Yu Qianzhou stopped walking. He was just asking casually and could not be bothered to care about a dead man. He did not expect to hear such a formidable person. His interest was piqued and he waved his hand. "Let's go, I want to see what this fierce general looks like." Chapter 257. Shi Tian was taken aback, but he quickly led the way. When they arrived at the edge of the training ground, the surrounding soldiers quickly made way for them when they saw the young general. Yu Qianzhou silently stood beside Shi Tian and looked at the simple wooden platform. It would have been fine if he didn't look, but once he did, he immediately gasped in shock. A bare-chested man was tied up with his hands behind his back, and an executioner was standing beside him, ready to execute him. The man was tall and muscular, and even though he was tied up, one could still feel the murderous aura emanating from his body. His eyes were filled with killing intent, and it was obvious that he was someone who had been through a lot of killing. What shocked Yu Qianzhou was not these, but the fact that this man's upper body was bare. Apart from his face, there was not a single patch of unscathed skin on his upper body. There were all kinds of mottled scars of various shapes and sizes, obviously left behind by the baptism of various weapons. On his chest and arms, there were also a few fresh wounds that had yet to dry. Damn it! This guy really crawled out from a pile of corpses. He probably used his scars as tattoos. Yu Qianzhou shook his head slightly. It was a pity that such a good general was killed just like that, but this was not his business. His gaze swept across Zhang Peng's body a few times, and just as he was about to leave. Suddenly, someone behind him said softly, "Leader, this man has innate spiritual roots." Innate spiritual roots. Yu Qianzhou was startled. He didn't need to turn around to know that it was his subordinate who was talking to him. Others wouldn't call him leader. Yu Qianzhou immediately focused his gaze on the man, and after a closer look, he was shocked once again. It really was innate spiritual roots. Anyone who entered the cultivation world must have spiritual roots, and people like Yu Qianzhou were only exceptions. Spiritual roots were also divided into different grades, and the so-called innate spiritual roots were the ones with the highest aptitude for cultivation. It was rumored that one could achieve twice the results with half the effort. It seemed that there hadn't been such a person in the cultivation world for a long time, and he didn't expect to meet one. Yu Qianzhou immediately turned his head and whispered into Shi Tian's ear, "Spare him, I have great use for him." Shi Tian actually heard the words of the person behind him, and although he didn't understand what it meant, since Yu Qianzhou had spoken, his father would definitely give him face, so there was hope for Zhang Ping to live. Thus, he said in a low voice, "This order can only be revoked with my father's order." There is still some time before noon, why don't Mr. inform my father? Let's go. Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything else. Shi Tian quickly led him towards the main tent. When they arrived at the main tent, the other soldiers stayed outside. After the two of them entered, Yu Qianqiu smiled at the figure in the middle who was holding a map and said, "General, how have you been?" Shi Wenguang turned around, and his face lit up. He took a few steps forward and bowed. "Mister, you're here." Yu Qianqiu smiled and nodded. His main purpose of coming here was to inform Shi Wenguang of the news from the capital, and to let Shi Wenguang know that his family was safe, so that he could focus on his rebellion. The two sat down, and after explaining the situation in the capital, Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "Great General, I have a request." Shi Wenguang waved his hand and smiled, "Mister, please don't joke around. With Mister's ability, what request do you have for me? I should be the one asking for a favor." Yu Qianqiu didn't speak any more nonsense. If he continued, the innate spiritual roots outside would be beheaded. He immediately said with a solemn expression, "I'm not joking. Just now, I saw a person who will be executed at noon. I hope that General can be merciful and give this person to me. I have great use for him." Shi Wenguang looked at his son suspiciously. He suspected that his son was the one who begged Yu Qianqiu to save Zhongpeng. Shi Tian smiled bitterly and waved his hand, "Father, please don't doubt me. It really has nothing to do with me. General, please don't think too much." Yu Qianqiu paused and said, "Let me explain it to you this way. When I passed by the execution ground, I discovered that Zhongpeng is not an ordinary person. He has excellent spiritual roots, and I wish to take him as my disciple. I hope that General can give me this face. So that's how it is. I will naturally give Mr. Face." Shi Wenguang stood up and took out a token from the bottle on the table. He handed it to Shi Tian and said, "Pass down my order, Zhongpeng's execution is to be postponed and brought to my tent." Shi Tian's face lit up with joy. He received the token and respectfully said, "This general will obey." Yu Qianqiu laughed and continued to converse with Shi Wenguang. Not long after, the tied-up Zhongpeng was brought in by Shi Tian. Shi Wenguang sat behind the table and stared at the newcomer with a gloomy expression. "Criminal General Zhongpeng greets General." Zhongpeng's voice was loud and clear as he knelt down. Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting not far from him, could feel the valiant aura coming from his body. Shi Wenguang shouted in a deep voice, "Zhongpeng, you have violated the military rules and should be beheaded. However, there is an expert who begged this general to accept you as his disciple. If you agree to be his disciple, this general can consider sparing your life." Yu Qianqiu smiled as he stared at Zhongpeng, thinking that he would definitely accept this person as his disciple. Who wouldn't want to live? Yu Qianqiu laughed coldly, and his index finger glowed with a demonic red light again, and he pointed it at the spear's head. With a sizzling sound, the spear began to melt from the spearhead all the way to the end of Zhongpeng's hand. The spear fell to the ground like molten iron. Zhongpeng only felt his hand burning, and he hurriedly threw the spear away. However, he didn't give up, and threw another punch at his opponent's face. "Humph!" Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly, intending to teach him a lesson. He retracted the red light on his finger, and flicked away Zhongpeng's heavy fist. Then, he quickly pointed at Zhongpeng's chest. Zhongpeng immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and his whole body was sent flying by the finger. He flipped a few times in the air, and fell to the ground. He looked like he was on the verge of death. The Shi father and son were shocked once again, and they looked at each other speechlessly. Yu Qianqiu expressionlessly stared at the person moaning on the ground. He said coldly, "What strength pulling 1,000 caddies? What bravery! You can't even compare to one of my fingers. How can you say that?" Is this all you have? You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. If you're not convinced, and you still have the strength, you can try again. Zhang Ping clutched his chest, and his whole body seemed to collapse. His face was pale, and he staggered to his feet. He staggered to the front of Yu Qianqiu, and knelt down. He kowtowed, and said, Zhang Ping is convinced, and pays his respects to Master. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.